Hey, Michael with XForcePC. I want to talk about the computer cases that we're currently using now in 2019 and kind of run through them smallest to largest. The first one I want to talk about here is the Fractal Design Define Nano S. And some of these model numbers get a little long. This is a mini ITX case. We're currently building the RTX Mini Pro. So it's like an our RTX Pro system, but shrunk down into a mini ITX size. Some notable things about this case: it's only 13 inches tall. It's not particularly deep. We'll take a look at depths here in a few minutes. It does support a dual fan radiator in the top, which is very nice. It's got a full-size filter in the bottom that's easily removable. And also behind this front panel, there is a full-size filter that you can remove. It's held in with magnets. So that is the smallest case that we sell. Obviously, it is shorter, but it's also not as deep and not as wide. And so that is the RTX Mini Pro. Now, the RTX system, which is a full-size ATX system, is what we typically build in this case. This is the... Sorry, people with loud motorcycles. Anyway, this is the Fantex P300 case. This, again, we build the RTX system in, and this has a tempered glass side panel. You're seeing a little bit of the plastic here. This is just the protective film that goes over the tempered glass side, so don't let that bother you. This video is more about the different sizes of the cases. Now, they will look sort of smaller than usual to you because I'm standing closer to you, but this is actually a full-size ATX case. Now, the next one is the Fantex P350X. This is the one that we build the RTX Pro in. And the advantage it has over this one is in the top, it has a spot for 2 fans, if we so choose, whereas the P300 just has a spot for 1 fan. It also has ventilation on either side, which is filtered. It's got the tempered glass side, just like the P300. It does have lighting and these little bands that you see coming down here, and you can change the color of that lighting, as well as you can make it flash or get brighter or dimmer and things like that. The next case we have is the P400. So this is basically a larger version of the P300, which we talked about earlier. The P400 is just a little bit deeper, and I think it's slightly wider, but again, it allows us a spot for 2 fans in the top instead of just 1 on the P300 case. We do not have this as standard fare with any of our builds, but if you order an RTX system and let's say you bump up the graphics card to the 2080 and you bump up to the i7 processor and water cooler and all that, and we feel like heat could be an issue, then we just sort of automatically upgrade you to this slightly larger case to accommodate the cooling that's necessary for that bigger processor, bigger graphics card, and so forth. Lastly, we have the Fractal Design Define R6. This case we're actually phasing out. I thought I'd throw it in for comparison purposes, but it is very heavy, very large. This is what we were building our total overkill system in. But what had happened over time is our RTX Pro system had gotten so good that it was almost as good as this total overkill and almost made it irrelevant. So we're phasing this one out, but again, I left it in for comparison purposes. And you'll see the size of it here in a minute. It's the only one that has a door in the front. It technically has a spot for an optical drive, but we actually don't use that because the water cooler we use takes up this entire top space and actually encroaches on where this optical drive would go. It does have filtration here in the front, which you can remove this panel and get to and clean. So let's take a look at these cases from a slightly different angle now. Okay, so we're back with a slightly different angle, and the purpose of this video, just to sort of reiterate if I didn't make that clear earlier, is to give you a size difference on these cases. We're not going into the nitty-gritty details on all these cases. I will mention a couple of things. Obviously, as you go this way, they get deeper. They're all in the same order they were in before. Again, starting with the RTX Mini Pro, which is a mini ITX case. You can see here we do have a spot for a dual fan radiator on this case, which is nice. I've got it from a higher angle, so you can see the tops of these cases as well. As I mentioned earlier, we build the RTX in the P300 case, and there's a spot for one fan in the top. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we might move you to this P400 case if you get a lot of options, i7 and the high-end graphics and all that, just to give us an extra spot for a fan, because there's 2 fan places in the top of this case. So as you can see, again, the depth and the height, just from a little bit different angle. And you know, there probably doesn't appear to be tons of variance between these systems looking at them, you know, from these different angles, but I can tell you, you feel it. And whether it be weight-wise, trying to carry it around, or trying to place it somewhere, even though these differences in size they're fairly subtle, you will definitely notice it in the long run. And that's one of the reasons I'm phasing out this Define R6. It's just so huge. Just trying to carry it around and box it up and all that, it's just very unwieldy. So we're trying to phase this one out and just go slightly smaller. So anyway, there's an overview of the whole line of cases we're currently using now in 2019.